The Dragon Lord Legacy, Chapter 4, Part 2. Despite him remembering the pain that he caused her, it did give her merit that he at least remembered her. His memories may be returning, but there was pain to come with them. She dared not move him, not wanting him to suffer anymore. She moved in close and laid her body right next to his, placing her head on top of his, while covering part of his body with her wing. She then used her arms to bring them close, letting him feel safe with her. She didn't care that she was being watched by others, she didn't care that she was in the resting area of other dragons, and she didn't care that Spike had hurt her in the past. Right now, she didn't care for anything else but Spike right now. Eliensa and Xynthia had watched and heard everything, both unsure of what to do. It was Torch that had motioned them both to leave them be and followed him outside, along with Ember's horde. Before any of the two can say anything, Torch spoke low enough for only them to hear. "For now, leave them be. Ember was in agony this morning, and now she shares it with him. Let them deal with this together, alone." He then huffed hotly. "We can discuss what to do with him outside." He saw them flinch, but both nodded. He then looked towards the smaller dragonesses before him. "You two, keep watch at the entrance. You can't be too far away, but don't disturb them. They need this." Both dragonesses nodded without complaint. With that, Torch led the two dragonesses outside and away from their own home. Meanwhile, Ember held Spike while whispering to him.
"You didn't mean to hurt me. You never want to hurt me. You were not you. You had no control, and I still care for you."
Over and over, she would repeat that, along with how it wasn't his fault or that she never gave up on him. He still continued to cry his little heart out, but it slowly transitioned from cries of pain and sadness to cries of his inability to remember more of his past and Ember. I still can't remember all of you," he sadly cried. Ember decided then to tell her all of his encounters, from the first time they met at the Gauntlet of Fire, where her father was giving up the throne for the next Dragon Lord, to when she sought him to be her consort. The lie came with it, but the truth was stronger than the lie. Then the day they both had physically become intimate. Seeing his blush made her chuckle. Hearing her chuckle made his heart grow with warmth and made the pain fade quickly. He then asked for details, which got quickly retracted in a state. Ember didn't hesitate and shared what they had done together. He was intrigued, but at the same time, he felt a bit happy that his body was still in an uneased state, for the tiny details that may have led to some awkward holding.
"Then came the day of the trials."
Her mood turned somber, but she didn't hide anything nor left anything out. She knew that this may be the only way to get his memories back, or it may damage him further, but she at least had to try.
"My father started the first one, the trial of will over greed. You passed with no problems, then came memory and adaptation with Darian. You were smart with your memory."
"Like I am now?" he chided with a small grin, and she smiled, enjoying his small humor.
"Maybe a bit more than now,"
she playfully added. She then turned a bit solemn as she spoke.
"And then came the physical aspect of the trial, which was survival."
She then ran her claws over his face, reminiscing the pain that he had endured with Xynthia.
"You know that they are not your blood mothers, right?"
she asked. Spike sighed and gave a slow nod. "Part of me remembers them at the trials, but nothing more before. I figured that they took me in after." She nodded, brushing her snout against his.
"After survival came Heart and Soul Lock. That was by Eliensa."
A sudden twitch and spasm jolted his body as she said that, and he whimpered. He blinked at why his body did that and just wondered. Ember gave a purr of sadness for him.
"She would look into your memories and see if your heart was pure, and if your memories are good and if your mind is stable."
She blinked and small moisturization formed at her edges.
"She forced your body to grow, but at the same time she looked into your past. What made you the dragon that, well, you are today."
Spike blinked at that and looked at her questioningly. How did she do that?" Ember gaped, her mouth slightly open, and she instantly concluded that Spike had no idea his mother was with abilities outside of normal dragons. Another secret held from him, a mother she claimed to be no less. She mentally prepared to lash at her later, but for now, she continued on with him.
Well, she has gifts, or powers, that exceed normal dragons. I'm sure that she would have told you at some point, but she uses them to look into your memories and your past.
She paused and then sadness cascaded her features.
She looked too deep and, well, found something that damaged you. Something in your past that made you remember something that you weren't supposed to.
She then tightly wrapped herself closer, as if worrying that he might push her away in the next part.
Your mind fractured and you fought against it and you lashed out at...
She didn't say it. She didn't have to. Spike finally wrapped his arms around her. Despite the uncomfortable laying positions that they were in, with Ember's wings wrapped around Spike's, he still managed to wrap his arm around and under her wing. His tail, longer than before, managed to reach out and wrap around hers. His snout was directly on her, brushing it against her. I remember. We both suffered. He swallowed the dry spittle that lingered on the back of his throat. The memory of his forced transformation, the memory he had to endure with his mother. I hurt you.
You didn't mean for that to happen,
she countered with a stern tone.
You lost your mind and you had no idea what you experienced.
My mother. He cut her off with that, and she balked at that. And he pressed on. My birth mother. I don't remember much, but she is what I remembered, and she was talking to me in my egg. I heard her voice. His eyes went vacant as he remembered more. She called me her special emerald. Ember's eyes glittered in amazement as she saw Spike remember a past that would be near impossible for most dragons to remember. But his eyes then turned to sadness with a small whimper leaving him. Then, I heard her scream. I felt myself being carried, tossed or turned. I'm not sure. But after that, I suddenly feel like the warmth of the sun holding me. I hear another voice, not my mother's, but she sounded like one. And after that, I remembered a bright light, brighter than the sun, and it felt just like it. Then it went away, and I was looking into the eyes of Violet. He opened his eyes and matched Ember's with intensity of warmth and hope. She was staring at me, not like my mother, not like Alianza, no. This was someone else. This was someone I don't recognize. Ember was about to answer, but she heard the approaching steps of small feet on the cave floor. She knew who it was and decided that for now, the conversation could wait. She gave a quick lick across his snout before smiling.
I want you to meet the rest of the horde. Here, come on.
She untangled herself from him and slowly rose. He did the same, albeit softly with any lingering pain, just softening his joints. From his view, he saw the two dragonesses he had met before. He didn't catch their names, but he knew that they were important to Ember. Ember motioned them closer, where the pinkish dragoness, taller than Ember and Spike, seemed joyful and giddily with them both. The smaller one, however, seemed a bit off. For one, she has taken a good look at him before she became stiff, and then her face flushed. He saw her cheeks turn a bit red as she stared at him, wide-eyed and near motionless.
I know that you've seen them yesterday, but I'd like to properly introduce them.
She motioned for the pink one.
This is Amethyst, though I'm sure you would remember her before.
Vague and undetailed memories of the dragoness came to mind, though the color was familiar, as was the warmth of the smile coming from her. She gave a quick nod and even quickly reached out, pulling him into a hug. He was caught by surprise by the taller dragoness, and she squealed loudly next to his ear.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're back. Well, somewhat.
She then pulled away, clapping her claws in delight.
I can't wait to have you back.
Spike blinked and gave a cautious smile. Well, I hope that I can get back. He wasn't sure of his own words. He then looked to the smaller, meek-looking dragoness. Ember moved to her and brought her close to both herself and Amethyst.
And here we have Smolder, the youngest of us.
Spike gave her a warm smile, and Smolder tried to return it, but failed as she felt her cheeks flush.
I'm sorry that we didn't meet properly.
She rubbed her arms.
It was, well, weird at the time.
Spike nodded in agreement. It was the simple reply. He looked up towards Ember. Were they with us before? Ember's smile dropped, as did the mood.
No.
She said, shaking her head with a soft tone.
After the trials...
She paused, really trying to find the right word. Spike nodded in understanding. After I struck you? It did not come out easier saying it. Ember and Amethyst flinched at that, while Smolder looked a bit frightened to hear it directly from the source. She wasn't there at the trials, but she has heard what had happened.
After that...
She repeated uneasily.
The backlash from you and I sharing the scepter's power caused me to receive most of the feedback. It would have begun to tear at me.
Spike was beside himself, trying to fathom how much pain he had put her through. Even as she went on, he did not like how this all turned out.
So I quickly chose Amethyst to join my horde.
She paused as her eyes glistened with minor regret, but it was based on survival that she had done so.
At least when you came back,
she stated with certainty, saying when instead of if. But it wasn't enough? He asked, innocent enough to let Ember know that he wasn't upset on taking more than just one dragon. She shook her head.
Well, you and I are different. Our different interactions with the scepter has us at odds that we two alone could handle that energy. Normal dragons our age would need 3 or more dragons to handle it. A few would be able to handle it for a time before needing a consort, or a horde.
She paused and motioned for Smolder and Amethyst.
They were the only ones I can trust, not seeking being my horde for the gems or fame.
Spike liked knowing that Ember trusted these two females with her, and he also liked knowing that one of them was kind and warm and bubbly, but the other seemed... And Smolder? Was his question. Smolder jolted when she heard her name, as if she was spacing out. Ember gave a grin and laid a palm on her shoulder.
She is just shy, and perhaps she enjoys your grown new looks.
Smolder turned a deep shade of red as she flushed.
Ember!
She growled lightly in embarrassment, not meeting Spike's eyes. Amethyst giggled at the display and Ember rubbed her arm, teasing the younger dragoness. Spike seemed perplexed and looked down at himself, as if just noticing his body for the first time. He didn't see himself any different, but then again, Ember said that he was smaller before he fell into his coma. He slightly flexed his chest and wings out of habit to see more of his body. This made Smolder look wide-eyed at his form, rippling with mass and stature that wasn't on him when he was her height. When she saw him over the course of the months as the molts changed him, she grew attached to his form, even dreaming of him being next to him, holding her, along with Ember and Amethyst. The truth was never a doubt that she would like him, for Ember described all the best qualities about him, including his life before, but now that he stood before her, handsome yet strong, intelligent but mindful, tall and gentle, she saw the ideal Drake that would make any dragoness happy, or even loved.